Hello everyone, my name is Azedon Durrant and this is my YouTube video on inconsistent discipline in the workplace and how it damages morale and organizational justice. My topic simply is differences in disciplinary approaches among managers undermine organizational consistency and harm employee morale. My thesis statement: inconsistent disciplinary practices across managers create perceptions of unfairness, reduce morale, and weaken organizational culture. Therefore, organizations must adopt standardized, transparent discipline policies to minimize bias and maintain productivity. In my experience as a teacher, I have seen firsthand how differences in disciplinary approaches among staff can influence workplace behavior and morale. One thing that has always stood out to me is how some employees become frustrated or disgruntled when they notice certain colleagues repeatedly get away with behaviors that they themselves believe they would be penalized for. These inconsistencies are not minor irritations. They have serious implications for organizational behavior. Today, I will argue that inconsistent disciplinary practices within organizations erode perceptions of fairness, damage morale, and reduce commitment. I would also propose that organizations should adopt standardized, transparent disciplinary frameworks to support morale, trust, and performance. To understand why inconsistent discipline is so harmful, we must first examine the concept of organizational justice, that is, employees' perception of fairness in the workplace. Organizational justice consists of several key dimensions, the first of which is distributive justice, which is fairness in outcomes. For example, who receives discipline, rewards, or even recognition. Secondly, there's procedural justice, which is fairness in the process used to make decisions. Thirdly, there's interactional justice, which is fairness in how employees are treated during these processes. Simply put, high fairness equates to better morale, trust, and workplace behavior, and low fairness results in resentment and disengagement from employees. Research supports the claim that high levels of perceived fairness are strongly associated with organizational citizenship behavior, which is the willingness of employees to go above and beyond for their jobs. Meanwhile, low perceptions of fairness are linked to disengagement and resentment and counterproductive work behaviors. In educational sectors specifically, a recent BMC psychological study found that teachers' perception of procedural justice predict reduce burnout and increase citizenship behavior. This shows that fairness in disciplinary processes is simply not an HR issue, but is a predicator of commitment, performance, and emotional climate of the workplace. Let's take a deeper look at the actual problem: inconsistent discipline. In many workplaces, including schools, inconsistent discipline appears in several ways. Based on my experience and supported by literature, the first of which is perceptions of favoritism, which occur when certain employees repeatedly break rules, come in late, or skip responsibilities without consequences. Colleagues notice this and begin to feel frustrated or feel like there's an injustice. Secondly, trust in leadership erodes when employees see rules applied inconsistently. Research from rural China shows that perceptions of punitive or inconsistent discipline significantly undermine trust in authority. Third, burnout increases when employees believe they are treated unfairly. In fact, perceived injustice is linked to emotional exhaustion and reduced motivation. Fourth, bias infiltrates decisions when policies are vague. A grounded theory study found that school administrators sometimes allow implicit bias to shape disciplinary choices, even unintentionally. Fifth, conflict develops between staff members when discipline is inconsistent. Employees often compare themselves to their colleagues. This comparison creates workplace tension, resentment, and decreased team cohesion. These points illustrate how seemingly small inconsistencies can create a toxic atmosphere over time. There are many toxic effects of inconsistent discipline. These include decreased morale, declining teamwork, increased counterproductive behaviors, and reduced confidence in management. This also leads to weak organizational culture. I believe that the solution to these issues are standardized, transparent discipline. To address these issues, organizations, including schools, should implement transparent discipline systems built around fairness and communication. Here's why. Number one, clear guidelines reduce ambiguity. Employees are more likely to trust decisions when rules, expectations, and consequences are communicated openly. Research shows that consistent enforcement improves trust and strengthens organizational climate. 2. Training increases fairness. Administrators and managers must be trained in implicit bias, equitable decision making, and conflict resolution. Studies show that leaders who receive this training produce consistent and socially just disciplinary outcomes. 3. Employee participation builds trust when employees are included in developing or reviewing disciplinary frameworks. They help provide ownership or develop ownership and perceive the system as more legitimate. 4. Supportive, not punitive systems work best. Approaches like positive behavioral intervention and supports PBIS emphasize clarity, consistency, and support strategies over harsh punishments. Restorative practices also help build trust and reduce perceptions that certain individuals get away with more than others. There are several approaches that help. These are 1. The PBIS system, restorative practices, clear documentation of decisions, clear communication of expectations, and consistent follow-through. A common counter-argument is that managers need flexibility because not all situations are the same, and enforcing discipline rigidly may ignore important context. This is partially true, as context absolutely matters. However, flexibility without structure leads to favoritism, inconsistency, and bias. Standardized discipline policies do not remove professional judgment, they simply ensure that judgment is applied fairly and transparently. Research shows that when clear processes exist, employees accept decisions even when the outcomes are not in their favor because they trust the fairness of the procedure. Leaders trained in equity and bias awareness can still use discretion, but in a way that is accountable, documented, and justifiable. So flexibility and fairness can coexist, but fairness must be the priority. In conclusion, inconsistent disciplinary practices, whether in schools, offices, or other organizations, are far more harmful than they appear on the surface. They undermine perceptions of fairness, damage morale, reduce trust, and hinder performance. By implementing standardized, transparent, and equitable disciplinary frameworks, organizations can strengthen morale, reduce burnout, support better relationships among staff, and create healthier, more productive workplace cultures. Thank you all so very much for watching.